recording
12
now.
o'clock.
It's 2 o'clock. We're going to argue over it. I just started recording. It's 12 o'clock where you are. It's 2 o'clock where I'm located at. Anyway, thank you and
And
welcome, Bucky.
it's 6 o'clock in New Zealand. So, yeah.
It is, and if we look, it's exactly 12 hours apart in what, Perth, Australia, around there. So
Yeah.
funny times. And yet you're using the sun to designate the time, but what if the sun wasn't present? Then what would you do? Would everybody have the same time?
Probably perspective on how you'd want to define what time was.
And that would be how we can define how that time is the illusion.
Yeah, basically. But we've already been over that.
Some people don't hear it all too often, though. Anyway, so this is a little bit of the talk before we get into the podcast. Welcome to the journey home, the story of us, and we're Bucky again with Tales on the Winds of Time. Although you have more discords and more books in a way that are very much. I mean, you probably can make 3 more books out of the stuff that you've been writing in the last year and a half. How many stories you've written? So,
Yeah. It's kind of annoying sometimes, Rose.
I mean, I could see why, like, the way that a story would come to you as somebody else is talking. So instead of more engaging into their conversation, your brain is off here on the side writing a whole freaking story and everything. And you're like, yes, yep. And I can understand that too, because there's the way people's brains are kind of wired, a lot, few people anyway. Um, they're able to multi process things, and not everybody does that. What we call people that may be a little bit more um, down to earth, maybe more grounded in 3D. They don't they can only hold maybe a thread or two and not able to multi-thread.
Yeah.
So, um, so in this episode, which we're on 13 right now, we're going to finish the 2 stories in the section you had. It's under the Great Tree, it's book stories. But we did not just the fabric, we talked about the ribbon skirt and the ribbon shirts. And also the powwow. And there were 2 other stories though that were at the end of it, and because we had already done 2 from a previous one, and we're trying to keep to 5, we didn't quite read them, so I figured we would finish those and then go into some of the ones that you have written on, um, like myths and stuff pertaining to animals, plants, and star patterns, constellations.
Yeah. Because it seemed like something to write about, something interesting.
I mean, like, and again, hearing the way that some of these stories are very much lost. A lot of people are getting into modern times and they're not going back and talking to, their elders. They're not talking to even grandma, grandpa, or even mom and dad. So some of that information about legends or myths or the way those stories were, they're being inundated with distractions nowadays. As you said, TikTok brain.
Yeah.
So knowing those stories are, at least in the perspective I'm observing, I believe are very important um, in knowing where we're going and where we've come from and where we are. But also, it shows the interconnectedness between all of us here. That each culture, even if they seemingly never had contact with each other, and I say that seemingly because we're quantumly intertwined, you know those stories are very similar, and that's how you see that we are intertwined. And that gives us a different respect and honor instead of a division that we're kind of seeing going through.
Yeah. Because it, I personally try to write a story so that you can give your perspective on it, even though you I leave it open enough to where you could give your own perspective on it, but also see like the tiniest little glimpse of where I'm coming from it. That's where I try to go with it. I don't tell you what the story is or how the story ended or how the story even began, because that way, if I want to um, expand on something, I can take it back to the beginning by doing another version of the story.
Which is a
Or
good.
yeah, or you can tell me what you thought that where the story like started or where the story should go or even if the story should end.
And it's a great way to tell a story, but it's also a really good way to explain the multiversal effect that we're seeing. You have the people that are observing it from at least on an outside, people who are living it on that thread, and then you're able to create a scenario, a space based off of things that are similar but maybe slightly different, so that each one of us can learn. We can jump in at a space and say, wait a second, I understand where this came from, like you're saying. So in a way, you're making you have a story like that, talking about the threads that they're kind of like guitar strings. You can strum it, you can take the note, make it wider and bigger, or you can make the note shorter, higher pitched, and you can start a
Yeah,
whole new song that way.
yeah, and each thread isn't defined by any shape or hue or sound. It's basically whatever you want it to be. It has infinite potential, just like everybody.
And I'll bring it a little bit around. That's what I won't say the name because again we've talked about other religious figures, but just the non-phonetics with the consonants YHWH. But you also can expand further back with it because it goes wasn't quite W, it was YHVH. So there's different ways to interpret it, but it wouldn't, like you're saying, it would not be defined until you added your own pronoun or uh, your own vowels to it in a way. So again, it's how it was sung, how it was played, how it was viewed, what perspective you were in. So what you're doing is literally giving the basis, the bass, the beats, the thing that holds the tune together. And then, like you said, you leave it open ended because, as we've talked about, things kind of, even at a beginning, it's really the ending of something else. And even at the end of something is the beginning of something new. So it never really quite ends or begins. It's just where do we want to start from?
Yeah,
Which is why we have many parts to them. Part one, part two of certain stories in here. And sometimes why we read some of the stories not so much in order, like in a big chunk, because, or at least parts from one section, parts from another, because then you see how they're related.
yeah,
Okay, so I I'll read the first two. Is that how we're gonna do it? And then you're gonna read the
yeah.
last.
You're gonna read the first two since your voice is at 100% today, and I know that you need to go talk to other people.
Me too. No, but probably will. um. All right, so I will read the first two, which are the last kind of two underneath. It was after the powwow, which was with every step from the last episode. So this one is vessels of culture, identity, and love. All right. So vessels of culture, identity, and love. Under the sprawling branches of the great tree of life, where the whispers of the wind danced through the leaves, Crater gathered the people around. The sun bathed the gathering in a warm glow, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of earth and life. Listen closely, my children, the Creator began, for I will share the story of the cradle-board, a gift woven from the threads of our existence and a symbol of the bond between you and the land. As the people leaned in, the Creator continued, long ago I fashioned the cradle-board from the heartwood of a mighty tree. This tree, like the great tree of life, stood tall and strong, cradling the sky in its branches. The cradle board was designed not just to carry your precious ones, but to embrace them within the spirit of your ancestors and the wisdom of the world around them. Practicality and mobility are its gifts, the Creator said, gesturing to the mothers who held their children close. With their hands freed, they can work, travel, and dance through life, while their little ones remain secure in the warmth of love and safety. The cradle board allows you to journey together, weaving the fabric of community. Creator's voice softened as they spoke of the kinship and identity. Each cradle board is adorned with the stories of your people. The designs reflect your heritage, your dreams, and the legacy you carry. They are not merely objects, they are living connections to your ancestors, reminding you of who you are and where you come from. Look at the babies nestled in their cradle boards, Creator continued, for they are not only protected but are also observers of the world. They watch as their families engage with the earth, learning the rhythms of life. This observation fosters a mindfulness that is sacred, teaching them the ways of their people, the teachings of the land. In this safe embrace, Creator said, the cradle board protects the innocent, shielding them from harm. It is a haven, a gentle reminder of the love that surrounds them, allowing them to grow close to their mothers who nurture them with every heartbeat. Creator paused, allowing the people to reflect on the artistry inherent in each cradle board. Some of these creations are not just functional, they are art. Intricate designs speak of your culture's values and the beauty that resides within your hearts. They are expressions of joy, pain, and resilience, crafted with the hands of those who came before you. As you walk with the path of revitalization, Creator encouraged, let this cradle board guide you back to your roots. Reconnect with the practices of your ancestors, for in doing so, you breathe life into your traditions and honor the spirits of those who walked before you. Remember, my children, Creator concluded, each element of the cradle board holds meaning. The footrest symbolizes Mother Earth, reminding you of your connections to the land. The head protector represents the rainbow, sheltering your little ones under the embrace of the skies. The lacings, the threads of power, lightning, and sun rays offer warmth and protection, wrapping your children in the embrace of creation. As the Creator finished, the people sat in silence, their hearts filled with understanding. They looked at the cradle boards, no longer just carriers, but vessels of culture, identity, and love. Under the great tree of life, they felt the strength of their ancestors and the promise of their future, forever intertwined in the sacred dance of life. So, do you have a cradle board, Becky?
I don't have any children, Rose.
Oh, well, I didn't know if you had the cradle board that was for you when you were a child.
No, no. We had. I know I had one when I was a baby, but I don't know what my grandmother then did with it.
Oh.
Yeah,
I would think it would be kicking around somewhere still.
yeah. It's probably somewhere around here. I just haven't gone searching for it.
Do you so we know okay, so what kind of things would be art on there? Would it be a name or
Yeah, carvings on the top part of it, and then you would see different woods and stuff. Like yeah, I'm pretty sure you would see different woods, like yeah, different woods, and then carvings on the head part of it where it says that it goes because the it goes across the front. There's like a band that goes across the front that's curved across the front.
Mhm.
That's that part where it says the rainbow.
Okay.
And that's also like you see nowadays with the stroller. It had it they had that also as sort of a thing for if it rains or something
Okay.
because a belief my a belief that I was taught is that if your child is outside, like a baby or like a toddler, and they're outside when it rains and the rain gets on their face, they will develop freckles.
Hmm.
So you never let your child out when it rains.
Interesting.
Yeah,
There's other cultures that believe like patting the top of a child's head is not good because it stops their spirit from like growing. It's like their crown chakra. So it's considered
yeah,
bad luck, but that is interesting. Freckles would grow. That's an interesting way to I haven't heard about that one.
yeah. It's obscure. When I tell people about that, like non-natives, they're like, "Well, that's really interesting." I'm like, "Yeah, you probably think we're crazy, but that's just something that Chad I was brought up with, you know."
No, it doesn't sound crazy. It's just interesting to hear them because it makes you wonder what other, like I said, other places. And so you had the cradle board, and then I know other cultures, and They have like, well, we see it. It's around what Easter time now. So you see in what Hebrews used to have their own certain pattern for their tribes. And then you also see in, I believe it's, what is it, Scottish, in Scotland, they have their own kilts that also is their own clans. So would that be something that would be carved in on the on a cradle board, like to signify your lineage in a way?
Yeah.
Would be interesting.
And then even some families, I heard they have their own like I guess it'd be like a family crest or something. Like they chose an animal to represent their family.
Mhm.
So you would see that a lot on the cradle boards and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, so can I ask what is your animal that would be your family crest or totem?
I don't think we have,
No.
but in my tribe, the bear is very um, sacred because he's the one that just a little side story. He's the one that taught the Utes how to bear dance, which they use to celebrate the coming of spring. So that's a huge thing. That's like one of the more major, besides the powwow here. That's one of the major things is the bear dance.
Have you written stories on the bear dance?
Yeah, I wrote this. I gave my own little spin on the story about the bear dance. Yeah, I have because that's one of the first ones that you learn. One of the first stories that you like are like a major story in when you besides the creation story is the bear dance, at least here.
So some of the reason I asked is because I hadn't said anything, but this early this morning, I was immersed in a vision dream space. So like, it's different than just sometimes people have regular dreams, but for me, I taste it, feel it, you're like the emotion of it. There was actually a really huge bear in that vision dream space, and I'm going, I don't have any ties really to bears. And I'm like, wait a second, I wonder if Bucky's got ties to a bear. It ended up in
Yeah,
the dream space in that way, and I was just like, okay. And actually brought me back to Away story because I believe in the one of the paintings or sketches I had, there was a bear in it too,
yeah,
which is the creator story, a creation myth that you have for the Ute tribe.
yeah. That's the original, I believe. So anyway,
Okay, so before I read the next one, it would be a really good idea that in the next episode, maybe because it is going to be spring, we kind of look at the bear dance stuff.
yeah, we
Would
could look in. You mean tell the story of the origin of the bear dance? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think we could
Yeah,
telling some of the stories on the myths and whatnot. I think that would be a great idea.
yeah,
It is coming into the spring, and I do know some people, at least in the area that I'm at, that are there's powwows starting, and would be nice to be interesting to kind of just see where they all come together at.
yeah,
Things I didn't know, so I didn't quite know about a cradle board. I've seen them, and I wasn't sure what, because I haven't dived into that, obviously into the belief and the tradition of it, what how it pertained to things. So I'm learning as well. So thank you. All right, so the last one in this little section is called Not Just Traditions. And then you have the last three, which is in the other Discord that we kind of picked up on.
okay,
All right, I will read this one. Not Just Traditions. Under the sprawling branches of the great tree of life, the people gathered, their hearts open and their spirits eager. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the assembly. As a settled crater emerged from a gentle breeze, the rustling leaves whispering his presence. Children of the earth, Crater began, his voice a melody that danced through the air. I have brought you here to share the sacred ways that connect you to the spirit of the land and to each other. In your hands you hold the power of the plants, the tools of your ancestors, and the wisdom that was flowed through generations, that has flowed through. With a sweeping gesture, Creator called forth the sacred plants. These gifts of the earth, sweet grass, sage, cedar, and tobacco, are not merely for your use, they are your kin. Each plant carries a purpose, a voice that speaks to the heart of the world. Consider sage, he continued as the fragrant smoke began to rise. It is a purifier sweeping through the shadows that linger. When you burn sage, you invite clarity and healing into your lives. Let it remind you that even in the darkest times, light can be found. Next, Creator pointed to the sweetgrass, its sweet aroma filling the air. Sweetgrass is a gift of love and kindness. When you weave it into your rituals, you cleanse not just the body, but the spirit. It reminds you to nurture your relationships with each other and with the world around you. The cedar, which is strong protective scent, was next. Cedar is a guardian, Creator explained. When you call upon its spirit, you invite protection and wisdom. It teaches you to stand strong against adversity and to find strength in community. Finally, Creator held up tobacco, its earthy essence grounding the gathering. Tobacco is a sacred offering, a sign of respect to the Creator and to all living things. When you use it in your prayers, remember that your words are powerful. They carry your intentions to the spirit world, bridging the seen and unseen. As the Creator paused, the people felt the weight of his words. He then presented the tools of smudging, the smudge stick, bowl, and feather. These are your instruments of connection. As you gather the sacred plants and light the flame, you create a space where the physical and spiritual realms meet. The smoke rises, carrying your prayers, your hopes, and your gratitude. Remember, my children, Creator's voice resonated deeply. These practices are not merely traditions, they are lifelines. They remind you of your place in the web of life, of your responsibility to honor the earth, each other, and the Creator. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the people felt a profound sense of unity and purpose. They knew that in their prayers, in their rituals, and in their everyday actions, they carried the teachings of the great tree of life within them. With hearts filled with gratitude, they began to share the sacred plants, smudging one another, cleansing their spirits, and weaving their lives into a tapestry of respect, love, and connection. And in the sacred moment, under the great tree of life, the people became one with the earth, the plants, and the spirit of Creator. So, how often do you smudge? I feel like I come home and I just like take a bath in it. I'm just kidding.
Almost every day, every other day at least.
I do often, even as we're here reading, I actually do have incense burning and waste much. So, um, but one of the things I was going to ask is I've seen people use shells for smudge bowls, but I've also seen them use turtle shells. Is there any like certain significance or tradition that people normally use as a bowl to smudge with? Or could it be
Just a
anything?
cultural thing, whatever you feel is like some say that they use the turtle shell because you know how indigenous belief the it's the turtle that's carrying that's the world, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yes.
Yeah, that's basically uh sort of like your an extra connection to the earth by using something natural like that.
Okay. It was just I've
Yeah.
seen different kinds, so I am familiar with studying on the drums, and how they're created. That a lot of them use cedar, so
Mhm.
having that guidance in something that is in a drum, that would be something really powerful too.
Yeah.
Um, I've yet to. I've seen a sweetgrass braid, but I have yet to actually come anywhere with close to sweetgrass. I was going to ask, do they hold sweetgrass ceremonies, or is there something ceremonious about that at all?
It's just like it says in the story, it's something to do with more of a connection because it's it's a natural thing that grows and you go and gather it. So you don't just gather it, you actually ask, like you should everything. Ask permission, be like, can I take this and thank you and all that sort of stuff, because you're taking from Mother Earth to use it for whatever you're going to use it for.
Hmm.
Yeah.
is kind of in the way, same as harvesting, or at least foraging,
Yeah,
I should say, because as we foraged for things like we did the mushrooms, there were ones that we, because there were only two growing, we took one and not the other. And then sometimes you don't take all of it, you take just small portions of it. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, same thing. And even just taking it, it's not like overabundance of it. And we end up sharing a lot of it. So it wasn't just something for us. Um, but like you're saying, um, so we had sweetgrass, you had sage. One of the things that I've noticed is, and I think it's something, I don't know if it has to do with indigenous, but what about what is it, Palo Santo wood? Are you familiar with that?
follow song. No,
Apparently it's a wood that's very fragrant, but it's something that you can, I don't know if it grows, but I think in that area, I would think it would in like the Caribbean, or at least in like Florida or in that area.
um,
I know something in the south, but it's something they also use for smudging. It's very fragrant, and I just thought maybe that you would have heard on it or had anything on it, but
yeah, cedar has a really sweet. The cedar wood, it actually
hmm
has a really sweet scent, and it burns really hot too. So that's really good for if you go camping and there's like a cedar tree.
hmm
Yeah,
that's why they do the smoked or the salmon on the cedar plank.
yeah,
That's got to be significant. Even the tradition of you preparing some kind of food. If you went fishing, caught a salmon, flayed it, put it on a cedar plank.
yeah. I guess I don't know. Don't um catch salmon, so I don't know. You'd have to talk to a Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. And tobacco, I have been going to, or at least part of another ceremony around here, and often use tobacco. You would put it into the actual the sage bowl. But you would, same way, you would put your prayers in it, and as you were smudged with the feather, those would be carried to the into the air, into the ether, but also anything that was negative was also kind of pulled away out of you and purified. But
Yeah.
in the particular area that I'm in, it happens to be a lot of actual tobacco farms, and you can
Mm,
see the difference between people that are farming tobacco for like commercially. It's total different than it is when you go to the res and you see people growing tobacco. It's a different experience because it's not so like cookie cutter industrialized. And as
yeah.
somebody, what I've channeled recently in a reading would say, this ancient medicine man shaman, he said to me that these are dead things. You treat it as dead things. You put it in dead things. Stop putting stuff in dead things. Like, it's not living. It's not done with reverence. It's not done with any kind of respect. It's like putting stuff in plastic. It's something that's dead that you're carrying it in, instead of something that had a living resonance.
Yeah.
So, but and the tobacco does smell sweeter. I can say that. I don't smoke it, but it does smell sweet. All right, you have the last ones.
Okay. Are
Um,
you ready?
yes, I am. Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Long ago, when the sky, or this is the Seven Sisters. Long ago, when the earth and sky were new, there were seven sisters who lived in a village. The sisters loved to dance, and every day they danced together in the forest, following each other wherever they went. However, one evening they heard a glorious song in the distance that seemed to call to them. Without speaking, they danced off toward the source of the song, forgetting about their home and suppers. They danced through the woods and into the forest. As the sisters danced, they found themselves moving higher and higher and towards a beautiful sound that was growing louder and more mysterious. Suddenly, their feet felt lighter, and they saw that everything they had ever known was far below them, and they knew they were dancing up into the sky. They continued to dance toward the sound, and the stars and moon seemed to watch over them. It was during this dance that the sisters met a great black bear, who sang a song to them. Her tail was strewn with stars, and around her neck she wore a shimmering necklace of stars. Her nose, toes, and belly twinkled, and there was a belt of shining stars around her belly. The sisters danced closer to her, and the bear continued to sing. They danced for hours, and the bear sang, and her twinkle grew brighter. However, after many hours, the sisters looked up and saw how very dark it was and how far away they had traveled, and they could not remember the way home. When they looked toward the moon, she told them that this was their new home now. The stars and the moon loved how they danced and wished for them to stay in the sky with them. The smallest sister heard her mother's voice and decided to leave her sisters to join her mother. As she raced down, she left behind a bright star trailing her. When she finally landed on the ground, she vanished, and in her place was simply a hole. The mother wept upon this and pleaded with her other daughters to stay in the sky and dance with the great black bear. Yes, mother, they called, we will stay in the sky. Down below, the mother sat and wept, and soon she saw a small green shoot spring up from the hole. Quickly it grew higher and higher. It was the youngest sister reaching up for her sisters. Higher the shoot grew till at last it reached the six sisters, and they cried, "Welcome back, sister." The seven stars are called the Pleiades, or the seven sisters. During a clear winter's night, one may catch a glimpse of this constellation in the south when the new moon appears in January. Pleiades reaches its highest point in the sky.
Um, so because I love hearing about different stories in the Pleiades and stuff, or the Seven Sisters. What was the more of the source material for this one, for this particular telling of it, if I could ask?
Yeah, remember you said that you wanted to learn to know the legend of the seven sisters
Hmm.
because my cousin brought it up, remember?
Hmm.
And so I went looking for it for you.
Was this the one that was the Sioux one that she was talking about?
Yeah, that's that one.
Because I've heard other, at least a couple other indigenous versions of it. One being the bear that actually was hunting it, was hunting the
Yeah,
sisters, and they went up onto a rock on a ledge and they couldn't get down, so they stayed up there so that the bear wouldn't get to them. Um, and one that came down wasn't. It was a sister that tried to come down. A hunter tried to rescue it, but I guess the hunter died from the bear. So I've heard that version before.
that that seems a little morbid. Don't you think people getting killed in a story?
Yeah, but again, if you look at, so if we look at the Pleiades in the sky, the is it the
Yeah,
Big Dipper is the bear, Cirrus Major, which is the bear in the sky. But you also have Orion, which is the hunter, and through it you have Taurus the bull. So I don't know if it was a buff. It could have been a buffalo. I'm not sure if it was the buffalo or the bear, but I can remember that there could have been a one with a buffalo chasing it as well, which would make sense because the way the constellations are set up in the skies. Yeah, sky. I could say skies because some people see things very differently.
hmm
I believe the Greek myths or something kind of goes along with that, which is where you get the name the Pleiades from. It was them escaping a hunter. I don't think it was a bear. I think it was just the hunter. And I'm not quite sure how some of it goes. It's been such a long time, so I'd have to look into that. But it's interesting to see because I do remember, like you're saying, like you're reading about the hole and then the shoot going up, the green shoot coming up and welcoming the sister back. I do remember that um, when I was younger because I've heard a lot of different stories of it. So, and yes, I did ask. So I'm thanking you and thanking your cousin for kind of like talking about it in the one of the episodes that we did. Um,
yeah, because that was. whenever she mentioned Luma,
Hmm.
the Luma story, and then that brought us to that one.
Well, it goes with the stars again being we're part of the stars, star stuff. If you really go back to that's where people caught this whole star seed thing from. The same
Mm,
materials, but yet also if you look at it as being light, like we're talking about quantum, we were talking about quantumly entangled or superposition, is that something in the stars or us here can affect something all the way across the galaxy or a universe somewhere else. And it could be something that's seemingly not related, but yet there's a fractal piece of us each in that.
yeah.
Um, and we kind of added the bear. It was still in this. And I've had multiple different visions of she bears or female bears, or even, like I said, different dream spaces with them in there. And I'm just like, it's really cool to again to hear the story from, and this would be the Sioux one, so this would be hearing that. I wonder how many other iterations of the story are in different tribes.
A lot,
It'd be fun to kind of explore all of them. That would probably take a while.
probably.
And
This
then
next one's kind of short.
is it? Oh, it has a
Yeah,
picture too. We didn't put that on there. Maybe we could,
yeah.
but it wasn't. We're realizing that.
You didn't read it?
I don't read majority of them. I pick out the titles, so I'm kind of guided, kind of like channeling when I channel music. I'm guided to this one, this one, this one. So if people are
Mm,
wondering as we're talking about it and some of the before talk that we have, like before we start getting the stories and how all of a sudden the story pertains to literally what we just talked about, I have no clue. I'm kind of going in this blind. So I didn't plan that. And most of the stories, which kind of I think would aggravate Bucky a bit, is I pick out either the night before or the day of that we're doing them.
because we have how many discords, and you're like, well, it's in that one, and I'm like, well, okay, and then you pick another one from the other one.
I know. There is a way they're woven together. My subconscious is apparently picking it up, so it's in there
Yeah.
somewhere. I'm getting inspiration to actually draw. I almost want to take a lot of these Pleiades stories, or the Seven Sister stories, and kind of paint more of that. Kind of go off into
Mm,
that because there's many myths surrounding it. Like we talked about, we went into Egyptian mythology. It's in there. A lot of it's in Hindu mythology. They're all kind of very much tied together. They're very important celestial things in the sky, celestial entities, essences, whichever you want to call it, that are visible for us. Relays.
yeah. And a lot of those have like beliefs in like the stars and all that.
Mm-hmm. You to think
Yeah,
that what
just from the little bit that I looked into for writing those stories for you.
we're in a day and age now. Well, more people are becoming more. They're taking the veils of illusion off or distractions. So you're watching them kind of expand. And in that process, you're understanding that a lot of our energy does. It comes from the sun, which is a star. So, therefore, a lot
Mm,
of our information could come through a relay through these stars, through these constellations. That's where our stories come from. It's where, when you're opening your crown chakra, if you want to go through that, and then it goes, you're relaying information from light. So,
mm,
all right, wait, the next one.
okay. This is the what is known as the Lady Slipper Orchid. Right. This is the Ojibwe legend on the Lady Slipper Orchid. Ojibwe legend tells of the great courage of a girl who saves her people from illness. The girl knows she must journey to the next village to get the healing herb mashkiki for her people who have all fallen ill. After lining her moccasins with rabbit fur, she braves the raging snowstorm and crosses a dark, frozen lake to reach the village. Then, rather than waiting for morning, she sets out for home while the villagers sleep, determined to help determined to help her people. During her trek through the snow, she loses her moccasins, and her bare feet are cut by icy shards and bleed with every step until she reaches her home. The next spring, beautiful lady slippers bloom from the place where her moccasins were lost, and from every spot her injured feet touched. This is the story of how the lady slipper came to be.
This is an interesting legend because there's a lot of, you can actually, it's more into the Buddhist, but it does pervade in other different mythologies, where that, where a person was stepping, the lotus flower would bloom, right? So a lot of
Yeah,
Kuan or Buddhist incarnations would do that. That's where the lotus flower blooms. So you have this beautiful lady slipper orchid that comes in, where she had done something that was very brave, to go look for to go get this medicine, this healing herb, and bring it to her people, and braved a storm through that. So
yeah,
I like that. Again, I love the connection even where you tell the story of the lady slipper, where it comes from. Very does much look like a lady slipper.
yep. They really know how to write a legend, don't they?
Well, how else do you explain your world to other people?
Be like, there was a flower and it grew in the ground, and we're like, well, that looks like a lady slipper. Yeah,
Important things to remember. So it's like, okay, as we're listening to a lot of legends and myths and stories, there is a way nowadays, people, like we were talking about in the beginning of this, about people remembering or having certain threads, because it's the way that you tell the stories. You have all these other threads going. I understand that with the timeline threads and the way paintings work for myself. Um, but there's a process, and I believe it was through Sherlock Holmes. So it's a psychological process in which, to remember something, you would tell a story or have a mind palace. So in order to remember certain words or long streams of things, you would basically make a building in your mind, and you would signify certain objects as being part of this story. So in a way, you can kind of see that for them to remember what these plants were, remember what stars were, remember the stories, they would tell a story based on, okay, we know the Pleiades are important. We know that the Big Dipper is important, even though it's a bear, but it's also points, you can have the stars in there and they line up with the North Star, so you know where it's going. Which, were you the one that posted that this morning about the Big Dipper?
yeah.
Okay, because I've heard,
It's actually the whirling. You talk about the
yeah,
whirling log.
yeah, yes.
Yeah,
So, and because it goes like you're talking about, and some people had thought it was a swastika, but it even symbolizes the four directions, four winds. They're very important symbols, but again, you're seeing, how do we explain where our north stars, our north node, our guiding points are? How do you understand landmarks so that you're able to progress or go through the world? So it's interesting that you can see a lot of these stories come from it. And then I kind of go a little further, because most, as we've talked about before, reality is based on your thoughts and emotions and even things that you've imagined. They are experiences that happen to go out into this construct, this matrix, this holographic simulation, however you want to view it, in that sense, and is created. And whether it's created here or created in another timeline, it's still created in a way. So there is a story where, again, all of this sprang in the being because of this woman who actually went out and did this.
yeah. And I actually expanded on that whole whirling log thing. I already wrote a story about it.
Yeah, maybe we should add that with the next one too. Let's do the bear dance and the whirling logs.
Yeah. So I think it's in yeah, I wrote it. Yeah, it's in Tales Under the Great Tree.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay,
just to let you know.
as I have not read the last one and I've just clicked on it, the picture of the horse that you have in this one,
Yeah.
it's also very similar to a horse that is painted on a particular flaming donut painting that I did not even know that you had a picture in here, but it's, yeah, it's very weird.
How do you
I don't know.
never?
I don't look sometimes. I make sure I, because that's how you know it's
Mm,
valid and there's a connection there, is because somebody can say, oh, well, you saw it here and that's how it. I don't know what I'm
yeah,
painting in the paintings. They
that's because
show me.
you're cheating.
They,
You're cheating. You're looking ahead without looking.
well, I mean, I don't know what's painted in the painting. That, like, people ask me, what are you painting, and I go, I don't know until it's done. I'm just given the forms or the shapes to begin with, and then it's kind of like sculpting it, so therefore the figures will come out of it. As I've asked you about what you like, how are you related in any way to horses, and of course you said you
Mhm.
don't really like horses, so, and yet it's come out in this soul portrait in a way. Um, and it's funny because where it's located in here, there is this essence of this picture that you have with feathers, a headdress on it in a way.
Mm.
Almost the same facial markings, almost. And I haven't looked at it until now. I have not seen this picture that you have until now. So,
Mhm.
all right, you have the last one.
Okay, this is the breath of the wind, a warrior's horse legend. I think they got a long enough title. Jeez. They say before the horse, warriors walked with the land. Their feet kissed the soil, their spirits grounded in stone. But one dawn, when the clouds brushed the sky, a strange wind galloped across the plains. Out of that wind came thunder, not from the sky, but from four-legged spirits with fire in their eyes. The people named them Sanka Wakan, sacred dogs, born of sky and breath, sent by the great mystery. To the Comanche, the horse was a gift from the heavens, not just a beast of burden, but a second soul, trained not by reins, but by whispers and heartbeats. Their bond was woven by silence and ceremony. Before battle, warriors painted their horses in prayer, each symbol a vow, each color a call to the ancestors. They did not ride alone, for the spirit of the steed was part of their courage, their roar in the storm. The Lakota believed when a warrior falls, he does not walk into the next world. He rides the horse that carried him through life's final fire. To this day, in songs and dances beneath the moon, they still honor these noble beings, messengers of wind, guardians of freedom, and if you listen to the wind racing the mountains, you may still hear hoof beats, echoes of a time when man and horse were one.
Okay, so that does answer the question of why the horse, in a way, is manifesting the way it's depicted in this painting. Because, like I said, I'm not sure, but I think it has to do with the Comanche that you have too. But the way that it's depicted is very much the way that this one is kind of coming out with, and especially from the clouds, because in this section that I have on this giant flaming donut is Bucky Wood of it, which is more than that now because it's not as flaming. It is kind of coming out in this nebulous cloud, and there's a lot of like electricity around it, and I'm not familiar with a lot of the horse, the way that indigenous people would, with their horses, how they described it, so it's very interesting. And wasn't it the Lakota that actually, um very much depended on a horse a lot, depending on, because where they were
Yeah,
located?
all the plains Indians and the ones out in the deserts and stuff. They say the Utes were the first to take the horse from the Spaniards.
I would think so.
But yeah,
It's a really, I like the way this picture was. I'm not sure where you got it.
it was just part of the thing.
Wow,
Searched up searched up that something to do with horses, and yeah,
it's interesting. I
it was
think,
just fake.
was it before the horse was introduced? It used to be a lot of more dogs would actually carry a lot of the
Yeah,
stuff. Hmm.
yes, ma'am.
There are two at the end of this, but we will save them probably for the next one. And I think that we should, like I said, I think getting into the beer dance, because that is something that was really accentuated in the last like day or two with the dream space for myself. I'm like, oh man, why is this giant bear here? um so the last two you have, and I haven't read them, but the titles are Rockabye Baby and Reincarnation. So they would be and you, does you have pictures with them?
So I don't think so.
It looks
It
like,
might, yeah, that one does. The Rockabye Baby one does,
okay, it looks
and
like
I'm not sure about the one with current reincarnation.
Reincarnation looks like it's shorter. So
Yeah,
um
but I really like the Rockabye Baby one. I think you'll like it.
as long as it's not like the Rockabye Baby song, because doesn't the baby fall in that one?
No, it gives you the origin of that song.
Well, there we go. Be a good one to actually read then.
And no, I don't know how to pronounce any of those indigenous words
We shall find out on
because
the next one.
it has the indigenous version of it, and then it has like the translation.
Okay.
So I'm going to try and like get to pronounce it. I'm going to ask around to see if yeah,
Okay. I'm sure there's somebody who sings it beautifully too.
yeah,
Um, the other thing that we were talking about in the last episode is we were briefly touched on, and you gave me a bit of, you found the information on it. We were talking about how indigenous cultures would treat people that kind of did a crime or broke something that was egregious or did something that would be against what the tribe was doing.
yeah,
And it was interesting, like we were talking about the difference between Western culture and even in Japan or other cultures, how they treat people who are criminals in a way, um, and how they tried to do it in the States where they wanted to, it's supposed to be a rehabilitation center, and it doesn't seem to go that way. We see a lot of people that have something that's this really small offense, like holding something like marijuana, and all of a sudden they're basically living in a prison most of their life. They're in prison, they're already pegged that this is something horrible, so therefore they're just low life. And it's sad that today's society culture treats people that way.
yeah.
And it was very refreshing
And
to
then,
see that indigenous cultures, like you gave the information, is more about rehabilitation and bringing harmony back to both. How do we reintegrate the person who committed the offense, and how do you treat the victim in this?
yeah,
I think going back to something like that would actually be a good idea because it does facilitate healing. I don't know if do you still have that? Wasn't
have
a,
what?
you gave me a long thing on it, and I'd have to go back and look at our
Yep.
messages. See if I can get all the way
Why?
back.
What are you wanting to ask about that?
Well, like we were talking about it, and then we're looking at belief system again. You're looking at stories where people were, they were in danger, people that were being chased, any one of these. How do people treat other people during that time? What would be the processes? Because we didn't see indigenous prisons anywhere. I
Yeah. Well, I think like you.
think I found it.
It says before the establishment of formal legal systems, indigenous people often considered actions harmful to their communities or that violated their cultural values as crimes, with punishment varying from crime to crime. It says indigenous societies had their own customary laws and social norms that governed behavior and relationships within community. Actions that disrupted the social order, caused harm to others, or violated sacred traditions were often considered crimes. So it wasn't more like you were saying about the whole marijuana thing.
Hmm.
It was more about you being the best person that you could be, basically. But
Hmm.
they still did consider theft and assault, murder, treachery, dishonoring sacred objects, and violating tribal rules and as crimes. So there was still that, but punishments vary greatly depending on the severity of the offense and the specific tribal traditions. They could range from reprimands, community service, fines, banishment, or even execution.
So
It
again,
all depended on, but mostly they wanted to they wanted to make the person see that they did wrong, and then help that person to be better.
mhm,
It wasn't just about punishing somebody.
which is again, it's because you have it on here. I got to it's healing and
Yeah,
reintegration, peacemaking circles, community involvement, mediation, restorative measures, traditional laws and customs. You see, and it is very different than, like I said, than even nowadays. And like you were talking about, you see somebody who basically commits something that's a small offense, and then the rest of their life they're paying for it or pegged in that pigeonholed right in there. And
yeah,
it's not restorative. It's not bringing justice in a way. So
yeah,
you're not teaching anybody. You're not rehabilitating them. You're basically, it's still an eye for an eye mentality. And I
yeah,
think as we go through these stories that you've a lot of different myths, a lot of different places where again paths that people have come down, and it's important that to understand it's even the respect, the honor, the respect. There's a lot of different cultures that have honor and respect, and again they treat their elderly different and such. And it almost seems, again we see it, we've seen it with people coming in to colonize, that things have, they have taken those traditions away, those beliefs, those respects away, which is kind of why we read the ribbon shirts and ribbon skirt story.
yeah,
I see these things coming back, these beliefs, these again, this honor, this respect, this compassion towards human beings, because the more that we connect to the outdoors, we connect to mother and we connect to, spirit outside, that there, it's less of this material mentality, less of this greed and envy, these things that cause people to be in survival mode, to treat other people as things instead of souls, because you
yeah,
have this respect for the outdoors, respect for the horses, respect for, again, for everything in your life that is gift. So I only, like I said, I brought it up just because I found it interesting and we didn't go into it in the last episode. So I figured we kind of like touch base on it in this one before we get ready to end it. It is a bit of a long episode. We tried going shorter, but that hardly ever happens.
hmm
So I'm going to thank you for allowing me to read and listen.
Thank you for listening and reading.
And we'll end this one at episode 13. We'll put all, as I said before, pertinent information for your book. And I did have a family member buy your book, and they're excited to read it. So, um, but I'll put all the information in there for Tales on the Winds of Time. We await your next one, and you can always, anybody can join the Discord to come in and do a reading. We kind of did this one a little faster today, and we forgot to notify Sam, or just didn't end up happening. So, um, but there are more people that we would love to come in and talk about it. And I may be posting to some of the other groups that we are located in. Um, and it is about time for connection. So thank you.